Hi, everyone. I'm Sam Valenti, and today I have the great honor of talking with an outstanding actor and a proud Canadian, Polly Shannon. I saw,
I'll agree with the
so,
latter half of
yeah.
that.
um, I saw that on your Instagram bio. It says that you're a failed jazz dancer. I gotta ask, what's the story behind that?
Well, I when I was little, I really wanted to be a dancer. I mean, and back in the 80s, jazz was it. If you remember Flashdance and all those movies, that was like my dream. And I was just like not ever good enough, and I was way too tall. So like dancers ballet dancers particularly aren't usually that big, and I was basically 5'8" by the time I was 13. So, I mean, I would come running for lifts in ballet and the boys would be like, "Oh my god, not ballet, here's boom boom." Boom." These little skinny ballet dancers trying to lift me up. It was pretty funny. And then I recognized that maybe it was time to let that dream go. So, failed jazz dancer, that's where that comes from.
Yeah, yeah. And what's kind of interesting is you're doing dancing and stuff, and you were also singing as well, like early on in addition to theater. But what was it specifically about theater, and acting that made it stick out for you more and made you want to go into that?
Um, I don't know. I just like when I was little, I just loved it. I loved performing. I found it quite like nerve-wracking, of course, but like natural to be on stage. Like once I was on stage, I just sort of felt cliche as it is at home, and I knew how to handle it. I innately knew how to uh, be in front of an audience, so to speak. Like I was never shy like that. I would get sickly nervous before, but as soon as my foot would step on the stage, I just like it would go away. It was weird. And I mean, I'm talking at like 8 years old. So that's kind of how that happened. And um I come from a small town in Canada, like near Ottawa. It's now called Gatineau, but it was Elmer, Quebec. And my mother, we moved there when I was about 7, and everyone was French speaking, and I didn't speak French. So there were only a few kids who spoke English. So my mom said, go around the block and ask people if they want to do a play, and I'll write a little play, and then you guys can put on a neighborhood play. And like literally, that started my mom's writing career because somebody from the CBC saw it, and then we all got a TV show from it, like to do like a Christmas special for the CBC, and I just kind of kept going from there. So that's how it started, and it was singing too. There was like singing and acting and dancing and all sorts of things with this little theater thing that somehow was just for fun, but it turned into actually a thing.
Yeah, and it's really cool that your mom has that very creative background, right? And would you say that your mom having that creative background, had any impact on on what you would do in your career?
100%. I would never have done it. I would probably like there just wasn't something around to do, honestly. That just wasn't something that was available to us. I mean, I think we had, I can't remember what the size of the town was then, but it was tiny. Like there were cows and there was like, one mall with the Zellers and, like there was, I think, two English elementary schools for the whole. I mean, it wasn't, where you could go and decide you'd want to be an actress. Like I remember when I got scouted to model, like it was unheard of. Like nobody, everyone, I was shocked. I had no idea that was even possible. And then when we were acting, and it kind of just was all sort of shocking as well. Nobody really did that. That I mean, people did, but not really from my town. Like it was kind of, if without my mom giving me access to that and um, understanding more than I could, obviously, as a child, um, I definitely wouldn't have ever been given access and probably made worse choices than I did. So there you go.
Elmer, where you grew up, it was very different from where you are now in LA, just a little bit different.
Oh my gosh, yes. Sorry, my phone is buzzing away over here. Yes, very different from where I am now. I'm in Marina del Rey, Venice Beach, California. And yeah, I mean, like we used to go riding around the block on our bikes and not come home till dark. And I would never let my kids do that here. Not even once in the daylight go around by themselves. So that's different. And just accessibility, to everything. You can really find pretty much everything you want here, good and bad. That wasn't true for Elmer back in the day.
Mm.
So
What's really interesting is you have a pretty amazing filmography. You've done so many things. I mean, it's pretty impressive.
thank you.
So I want to get into some of the roles that you've had throughout your career. Um, you played Miss USA in a film called No Contest. You got to work with some. I got to list off some of these names you got to work with in this movie: Shannon Tweed, Robert
Yeah.
Dodd, Roddy Piper, and even the Dice Man himself, Andrew Dice Clay. Uh, what memories do you have from working on that film?
A lot, yeah. Uh, I was very young when I did that, and we were shooting night shoots all night, every night. So that was tough. That's always kind of tough. But there were some girls in that I knew, like Chandra and another girl named Joanne. And it was like we kind of stuck together as a team, and Bridget became friends with me on that show. uh, and we kind of like clung together because it was intense. And Shannon was lovely to us, but she was kind of like from a different world than we were. And Andrew was very funny, and actually he was very nice to us, because we were all young nice girls. He wasn't horrendous. I didn't always like get it. Some of his jokes, I didn't understand it at the time, but I think I was ready for, just because of his reputation. Not that he's lecherous in any way, but just his humor was always a bit anti-feminist, maybe. I don't even know if that's true, but that's what I remember thinking. And but he was never like that. He was never like slimy with me ever, and we worked a lot together. So yeah.
Yeah,
And
and
Rowdy, Roddy Piper, he was tough. He was a really nice man, but when he was acting, he always kind of did it for real, and that we were struggling with a bit. Like, I think because he was a wrestler, so like I guess like if they flip you, they really do. Whereas, usually actresses don't have to like have their hair ripped out for real or anything. So it was interesting to work with him because we really had to be very careful, and not that he'd ever want to hurt us, but it was just, I think he was used to working with people who knew how to do stunts better than we did. So, and Robert Davi was always very nice. He was cool, seemed cool to me. So,
yeah. It's a very intense, very intense film.
yeah.
But it's a fun watch. No, I enjoyed it.
There's actually one scene that we used to do this thing with my actors friends. I probably shouldn't say this, but whatever. Um, we do the like anti-Oscars. So we do like who did the worst acting ever. And we like bring clips of ourselves. And there's this one scene where I can't remember who's strangling me. Like somebody's strangling me. And I'm like, in the scene, and then his hands are up and I'm still doing the face, like, I'm still being
Uh,
strangled, and I think I got runner up one year with that one. Believe it or not, there was worse than that in my peer group. So, yeah, that was always fun.
yeah, and another person I saw that you got to work with was the great Jim Varney on
Yes.
Snowboard Academy. What what was it like working with him on that film?
Oh, he was lovely. I mean, honestly, he was so sweet. He was really funny, nice. He was always, to be honest, you wouldn't have known that he was really an actor. Like, except for that he was eccentric. He was just kind of there hanging out, like doing the thing. He wasn't demanding in any way, shape, or form. He was very lovely. And we were stuck on a very cold mountain. I mean, I got a little bit of hypothermia during that shoot because we were outside and I was stuck in continuity wearing an outfit that we had worn earlier. And I don't really remember, but I remember like trying to say my mouth was frozen and I couldn't say it. And then I just kind of remember later them like panicking and bringing me in and yeah. But he was always nice. It was shot at Mont Tremblant, and at night the wind chill factor was insane. So yeah.
Yeah, and what's interesting about Snowboard Academy is another actor in that film is Bridget Nielsen, of course. And one of her most famous roles is playing Ivan Drago's wife in Rocky 4. And
Yeah.
then, who would have guessed later on you end up working with Ivan Drago himself, Dolph Lundgren, in direct action. Just, I thought that was pretty neat.
Yeah, I love Dolph. Honestly, I loved Dolph. I had a great time. It was a crazy shoot, but Dolph Lundgren is a lovely, funny, enormous human. He's great. He's very smart. Well, I think most people know that, but like he's really smart. He was MIT guy, when he started, and uh, he speaks all these languages, and he's just, he's I think he is a black belt in karate. I might be messing that up. He's a black belt in something like very high up, so he actually does know how to do all the fighting and I do not. So we had some good laughs about me trying to like lift up these guns that were enormous. I'm like, I can't even hold the gun. And then like I'd shoot this scene with him and my whole face would be going, and we'd laugh, like this British, it was a bullpup. I don't know if you saw the gun I was shooting. It was huge, like ridiculous. And literally my whole face when it was on auto was like, it was just so powerful. And I weighed probably like 100 pounds at that point. I was so tiny. So it was hilarious. But we had a great time. He takes his work very seriously. He's got a huge fan base and he does this thing and then he sort of had like a comeback recently, hasn't he? So
Hmm. Yeah.
yeah.
In '98, you starred in this film called Hard to Forget. It's a very, very cool movie. And it was shot in South Africa. So I got to ask, what was that experience like getting to shoot a movie, over there? What was that like?
Um, I loved South Africa so much. It was probably not the movie, but the experience itself was one of the highlights of my life, honestly. It was so beautiful. I felt so um I don't know, at home there. Like I said that before, but like really I don't know, like I had been there before, I understood it somehow. And in fact, I stayed after we finished shooting and I went 4x4ing and lived in the back of a pickup truck for a couple of months with some of the people I met there, believe it or not.
Okay.
So I had a great time in South Africa. And if it wasn't so hard to be a woman from Canada living there, I probably would have stayed longer. It was just I was not independent, because it's so dangerous. And if you don't know what you're doing, like it's not that easy. So, but I loved it. The experience was beautiful. I got to see and do things that I mean people never get to do. I got to see some of the most beautiful exclusive safari parks where they animal rescues and learn about stuff. I got to go and get trained with he's not a zoologist, but he's like some kind of, is it a zoologist that studies animals? No, I don't know. Some kind of guy who studies these animals and like I had to learn about dealing with elephants and a rhino and I was like and then like I was sitting there petting cheetahs like wild cheetahs and like I was learning how to like disgustingly take ticks off their head so that they would like love you. Like it was interesting, just not something everyone gets to experience. And then we were like just all over. We were in Ala Ridge, Johannesburg, Cape Town, all the way up the Western Cape to Lungabon and Stellenbosch, and then up the Eastern coast a little. I mean, it was just like such an incredible experience. I loved it. I wish I could go back. One day I would like to go back and see it again. So
So where does South Africa rank on like the list of your favorite filming locations throughout your career?
probably the top, one of the top one or two for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure it's hard to. I'm sure it's
Yeah, I'm just trying to
hard to
think, am I
beat.
missing something? You're gonna bring up another movie and be like, "Oh, wait, that's really my favorite," but definitely, like, for that time in my life, I don't think there could have been a better experience for me. So, it was very freeing and, like, kinda taught me to trust myself more, and it was a cool experience. So and I played 1 and 2 on the call sheet, so that's always exciting on a movie.
Mhm. Yeah.
'Cause I was twins.
Yes.
There you go.
Yeah. And the next year in 1999, you're in a really great movie, the Sheldon Kennedy story,
Oh,
playing
yeah.
Sheldon's wife, Jana. You give a great heartfelt performance in this movie. It's one of my favorites. What
Yeah.
did it mean to you to be a part of sharing, Sheldon's courageous story with that movie?
That was a really important thing for me for sure. I was hanging out with Sheldon while we were shooting and Jana. And I mean, you could just see that this guy was so damaged by this. I don't know what kind of language I'm allowed to use, but you can imagine what I'd like to say. Um, and it really wasn't talked about back then. Like, no, he was sort of the first one who was so brave to come forward, and then there were a few other guys who came forward after, but, it was kinda like this hush hush thing, and when I think about, like, now that I have kids, like, what? Like, how did that go on for so long? How did nobody notice? How did this happen? But I think because no one was talking about stuff and boys were so ashamed to talk about it, that and I think he freed people to come forward. He in a very macho world, so and I think everyone was genuinely on his side. And at one point when before the movie came out, but after I had shot it, a family member came to me privately and told me that they also had been uh, when they were a child molested by not from my side of the family, but from the other half of his family, a family friend has a child. So, like it was neat because it kind of started a talking, wasn't a talking point, but started people opening up, I think, who saw it at least and felt comfortable. Well, if that tough hockey player can come forward, then so can I, it's okay. So I think he was very brave. I don't know how he's doing anymore, though. I'd love to know.
Yeah, you mentioned hanging around Sheldon and Jana, during filming. Kind of, what was your prep like for the role, and kind of what insights, were they giving you to kind of, I guess, help with your performance or stuff like that?
Um, you know, Honestly, for me, I think she was just so taken aback. Like, I don't think she had any idea that it was when she got involved with him was so he was all the stuff that happened, and I think so it was kind of like, oh my God, she was like running after trying to pick up all the pieces, juggling this as a young person because they were young at the time when this all happened, in a world that she wasn't particularly familiar with, and so I kind of just played that, and I also listening to him tell his stories just kind of like further allowed me to really care about that character, like really try my best to uh, help that story move forward. So.
Yeah, and what's interesting is is this role you're actually playing, you're playing a real life figure, in this movie, and then just a couple of years later, you ended up playing another real life figure with Margaret Trudeau, and you've said that that was like a very, challenging role for you, right?
Yeah, definitely. It was so under the spotlight. That was, after Pierre died, they decided to make this mini series about his life, and some people were not happy about that. And then they cast Colin Feore, who was brilliant. If you saw it, Colin was like, he's such an incredible actor. Um, then there was so much speculation as to who would play Maggie, blah blah blah. And then I got it, and it was literally announced like the next day, maybe even that day. And it was on the front page of every newspaper in Canada, to the point where my father called me, like, "Oh, I don't expect to see you on the front page of like the Globe and Mail or whatever newspaper it was." And so it was like just so much pressure about it. And then we were reenacting things that there were videos of, so were actually footage. There was footage of some of the events that we were filming in the movie. And that I found challenging, because I couldn't just take my own version of it. I had to try my best to match her. And that was challenging. I'm not gonna lie, like just trying to figure out what was she thinking? How did she get here? What were the forces that brought her to make that choice? That kind of thing was challenging. Um and in a hurricane of a filming situation, I was shooting another show called Leap Years at the same time in Toronto, and I was flying back and forth between the two. So I was doing 3 days on Trudeau and 2 days on Leap Years. It was a lot. So I was like also just really like trying my best to just stay afloat. It was actually very exciting. I was having a blast doing it. But yeah, and it was tough too, because I think, you know, people had this idea that she was just this flaky kind of woman, but she wasn't. She was a kid, and so that was like really frustrating for me, because I people were like, "Well, you played her just as much." Well, because she was like 18, and then when she met him, she was 16, and then they got married young. Like she was like way too young to be handling, I think, the situations that she was forced to handle, or decided to handle. She wasn't forced to do. Um, but it was a lot, and I think I felt the pressure of all the eyeballs on me, and mostly her and her children. I didn't want to let her down. That was really, really important to me, because I really felt for her. I understood her. I think her story's never really been fully told. Um, and I think there was a lot going on there that was um, exploited, and not. I don't think people helped her the way they should have helped her, and I think that was devastating to someone like Margaret. And I don't think that I could have ever done that really in a series that was mostly based on Pierre. But I tried my best. I tried my best to like hold her in an honorable place. So.
From your perspective, what do you find more interesting, playing these real life figures or playing like just a fictional character?
Um, they're both interesting in different ways. A real life figure has a different responsibility to it, I think, because you're beholden to the person you're playing, and then also to the film, and then you also are trying to make art, and you're trying, so you also have to always, because it's you, bring yourself to it. So it's challenging in that way. And sometimes very rewarding, because it's a true story and it means something to you, and you want to uh, really step up for that person in that role. When you're playing something that's, obviously full fiction, a fictional character, I guess, uh, if it's not based on a novel, that's a whole other world. You have this open creative situation. You can, as long as you get hired, you can be as creative as you want. You don't, you can do whatever you want. You just have to like stay within the parameters of the story and the filmmakers. So both are good, both are fun, both are challenging because sometimes you're like way off base. I've actually gone in for a horror movie audition that I thought was a comedy.
Mm.
That was a bit embarrassing, but it was pretty funny.
Sure.
So, but yeah.
Now, I believe around 2005, you landed a part for a series that would air on ABC called What About Brian? And you shot a pilot for it, but then the
Yeah.
show premiered and you weren't on it. I'm curious, do you remember what happened with that situation?
Yeah, I don't know what happened with that situation. I got the part. It was all very exciting. They flew me to the upfronts and then I don't know, they tested it. I tested well. I have no idea what really happened. I think there was some issue that they didn't feel like Brian, I can't even remember his name now. Is it Brian? No. He was from Seventh Heaven. What's his name? I don't know. It's gone from my head. I'm sorry. And the guy playing Brian, who's a well-known actor and lovely, and I on film didn't have much chemistry. So I think perhaps that's why I got replaced. I don't know, but they held me for so long because they couldn't find anyone to do it until the very end. So it's a bit of a nightmare, quite honestly.
Hmm.
So I wasn't allowed to do anything else. I mean, yeah. So not my favorite one.
Yeah, yeah. And well, I'll say this: the show it only lasted 2 seasons. I'm
Still,
sure, I'm sure if you were on it, it would have had a much longer run.
well, thank you. I appreciate that.
So,
I appreciate
I mean, all I can say is the results speak for themselves, right?
I guess. I mean, I personally, I think like 2 seasons is pretty good, but, I helped them get picked up, so there you go.
See, there you go, there you go.
Yeah.
Now, of course, we got to talk about this amazing performance that you gave just a few years ago in Defining Moments. Such a
Oh,
wonderful performance you gave. Of course, as many people know, this is the final film role for the great Burt Reynolds. And this
yeah.
was not the first time that you had worked with him because you both were in Frankenstein and Me.
That's right. Good on you. That's
Yeah.
right. 100%. Yep. Bert and I did that when I was maybe 20, Frankenstein and Me, I think. And then, it was one day of shooting, and I remember doing this thing, and I was playing the makeup. So I was playing this famous, like a B movie queen, horror movie kind of actress,
Mm.
and then in the end, so it's this little boy's fantasy of that. And then in the end of the movie, the reality comes, and I'm a makeup artist on the set that he's really doing something like this. And so that was the only time I really got to work with Bert. And I just remember kind of doing something, and then he's like, make sure you smile into that camera and show everyone that pretty face. I was like, okay, thank you. And then years later, I got to work with him and play his daughter. And I have to tell you, I loved him. I was so sad when he died. He was so sweet to me. He was so sweet to everyone. He loved making movies. He loved acting. I don't think he was very well, sadly, at the end. But he was just like, he wanted to make, it was like, this hotel complex we were in because we were shooting in north of Toronto in Markham, and it was this huge, I don't know, hotel, like all these sort of extended stays and stuff. And he always wanted to walk me to my room, and I'm like, not out of any lecherous reason, but because he's like a gentleman and you don't let a woman walk alone. I was like, Bert, like, I'm okay. I should walk you to your room. You're such a sweetheart. He always wanted to, like, he was just very classy and very, making sure that I was happy with my scenes and making sure that everyone was good and really like Eric Peterson was on set. Do you know him? He's like a Canadian actor. He played
Yes,
the
yes.
doctor, yeah. And Bert was just in awe of him and like saying how amazing he was, and he was so easily able to give other actors compliments and give credit where it was due. So I thought he was just a great guy. So
Yeah, I really want to commend you on your performance in this film because in your scenes with Bert, something I noticed is I feel like you both brought out the best in each other in terms of your
oh,
acting.
thank you. That's very kind. Thank you very much. I think we had a nice relationship that, translated on screen because we were funny together. We would always have like little, like, one up banter and stuff like this. And yet it was very much immediately a father daughter kind of dynamic between us. So I think that was nice for Stephen to have sort of the ease of getting that relationship, because that's the hardest part of acting. Well, not the hard, it was one of the hardest parts is establishing the relationship between the characters without having to say, I'm your daughter and you're my dad. Like often films and TV shows do that. So no, but he was lovely. I was very upset. My kids were even upset. They were like, oh, so because he was so sweet.
Yeah, and Bert's narration at the end of the film is really wonderful. And he says, "You will all have a defining moment in your life that will carry with you till the end of time." That's his last sentence of his narration. And I'm curious, what's that defining moment for you in your life?
I don't know. I think I have way more than one. I wouldn't be able to pick one. I think if we're talking about life and my heart, it's my kids when my kids came to earth, came to fruition, were born. Um, I think there were sort of these moments in my career where uh, where I knew that I was supposed to do that for a while, acting for a while, just like getting scouted. I was in a mall at 13 and I was always kind of like this gangly kid with a bad perm, big teeth. And I think like I finally kind of grew into myself at 13, and twice in one day I was scouted to model by two legitimate agencies. And so that was kind of like a moment for me. I was like, oh, okay, there is a way to go out of Elmer and Ottawa area. And then I think the acting thing, like I think doing the plays all over, realizing like performing on Parliament Hill on Canada Day, and Alanis Morissette was singing, and like doing all this. Those were big moments for me, and I don't think I appreciated how big a deal that was with like all those people. Do you know how big Parliament Hill is and stuff on
Oh
Canada Day?
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So just those moments. Um, there were moments, where they changed the direction, just like a certain film that I worked on that I was like, I don't know if I want to do this anymore moments too. So there were good moments and bad moments. So it's hard to say what is the most defining one. Yeah.
Well, as you mentioned, know you're, in addition to being a great actor, you're also a parent, like you mentioned. What's that journey been like for you, being a parent and seeing your kids grow up?
I mean, I love being a mom. It's like it's so fun. It's a lot of work, but it's super fun. I think I'm very blessed with having two really amazing kids. One is very busy. My little boy is like a hurricane. We call him the menace of Venice.
Uh,
He's only 8. And my daughter is kind of this outstanding human being. I mean, really, like if you could create, and I know I'm her mother, so I'm obviously biased, but if you could create someone to all the things that you would hope for, you would create Pasha. Like she's just such a nice, kind, empathetic, talented person. She just, if she's not good at something, she will work at it until she's amazing at it. She's just that person. She's I'm in awe of her. I tell her all the time because she plays sports, and I was never very good at sports. So she's on a flag football team, American football, and she's the only girl. And she plays on an all boys baseball team. And then she's like on a 10 and under basketball team and a 15 and under basketball team. I mean, she's just insane. And I go, go out there and do this. I'm like, listen, most parents don't tell the kids this, but I am living vicariously through you. Like I never got to be the girl like the boys. Like I always wanted to be that girl. I was never able, and she is. And so we have this good laugh about it. But she's so cool. And my son is this like mad genius kid. So he's so funny and thinks of things that nobody ever thinks of, just weird and wonderful and hilarious ideas come out of that child. So I'll be so eager to see what he ends up doing with his life. So it's
well,
fun. Being an actor and a parent is hard though, I'm not gonna lie, because you like don't want to miss your kids all the time. And you know it's hard. I've struggled with that because I kind of said I wouldn't do a TV series while my kids were little because I just didn't want to miss everything, you know.
well,
So
it definitely seems like your kids have had a great upbringing.
I think so. I hope so.
Seems to me like you've done a pretty great job.
Thank you. That's very kind of you. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Now, this is the last question I always ask at the end of these interviews. What is the biggest piece of advice that you have for aspiring actors?
Hmm. Make sure you love yourself first. Don't get into acting to be loved, because I think a lot of people do it because they get applause, they get approval, they get all this stuff from acting, and it's just never going to satisfy that. You get way more disapproval than approval. um, and I think if you're confident in with who you are and with what you are, and all the values that you have, you can do very well and have a great time. I think if you're not solid in that, it can be a very scary, horrendous career. That sounds a little like dark to end on, but I do think that's true. So
Well, I can certainly say this, no, the passion and the love that you have for acting, it shows up all the time in your
thank
performances. So,
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I love acting. I mean, I don't love the business of acting, but I love the job, if that makes sense. Unfortunately, the business part is like kind of ugly, but I love the actual task of acting. It is so fun.
thank you so much for letting me
Mm,
have this
yes.
opportunity to chat with you today. It was really an honor.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. You asked very interesting questions. So good job. Thank you so much.